Well, previous councils, I think, did, obviously you can't talk about city business, but they did, somewhat more less distant social gatherings, where they would maybe go out for a drink after the council meeting. But yeah, not really an option nowadays.
All right, Mayor Stevens, we are now live.
All righty. Thank you very much. Thanks everybody for joining us on this East Lansing City Council regular special meeting. Will the clerk please call the roll, and folks keep in mind our new virtual rules.
Councilmember Babcock.
Present. Attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan in Ingham County.
Councilmember Bacon.
Present. Attending virtually, East Lansing, Clinton County.
Councilmember Watson.
Here, attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg.
Attending virtually from East Lansing, Ingham County.
Mayor Stevens.
Here attending virtually from East Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County. Thank you very much. Our next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for that or any changes to the agenda?
I'll move that we approve tonight's agenda.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Wonderful. Our next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the regular council special meeting from November 24th. Are there any changes to those minutes or a motion?
I will move approval of the November 24th council minutes.
Is there a second?
A second.
Seconded by Councilmember Babcock, moved by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Wonderful. On to our next portion of the agenda, which is communications. The first item is just a statement that all written communications are posted on the online agenda under the link that says written communications. Next is communications from the audience. We have a 5-minute time limit on these communications, and I am trying to do better about holding people to that. And it is a little bit awkward for me to interject and try to just say thank you when that time is up. Emily will be giving a 30-second warning to folks, but in the interest of making sure that everything's fair, I'm going to be doing that more. It's not because I don't want to hear what folks are saying, but it's just fairness to those people that are speaking, that everybody gets the same amount of time. Emily, would you please call in anybody that called in?
Yep. Caller with the phone number ending in 846. You are now permitted to address council.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I'm Aaron Souza at 621 Sunset Lane. And my comments are regarding the debt and bond issues for Center City. And my comments are monetary decisions are moral decisions, because fundamentally you are making moral decisions when you decide to take money from one group and spend it on another group. You can act to provide support to those who need help, or too often act to support those with access to power. You all know that much of the additional $6 million in funding committed to this project is money that would go to support the staff and retirees of the city. But a significant amount of the money would also support the Lansing Community College, the Ingham County Intermediate School District and Vocational Education, the library, and CATA. Each of these organizations help those in our community who need help. These people tend to be disadvantaged and without access to power. They face disparities in education, health, and transportation. They tend to be minoritized populations. Or the money can go to the project whose people appear to be uniformly male and white and with good access to power. It is a stark choice. But this is how structural racism and sexism persist and are created. If we're going to change structural racism and sexism, good-hearted people have to make difficult decisions on how to spend money to oppose the disparities in our community. This would have been a great opportunity for people to prove they were good-hearted people. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the caller? All right. Emily, would you mind bringing in the next caller? Thanks for calling in.
Caller with the phone number ending in 963. You are now permitted to address council.
Hi, this is Alice Jagger from 621 Sunset Lane. I am also calling regarding what happened with the bonds. In June 2017, your predecessors, a council of 5 people, voted through an approximately $50.2 million cap on the TIF capture for the Center City District project. They did so because they had been subject to public criticism that was worried about the use of TIF for things that TIF should not be used for. And they did it in order to strictly limit the use of captured taxes to the public infrastructure build and the 5% interest on the public infrastructure, which when they calculated came to exactly or around the figure $50.2 million. This is all recorded on the meeting videotape. Lori Mullins specifically stood up and gave that number. There had been a redlining of the resolution. It was discussed at council, and Mr. Danhoff was there. In fact, Mr. Danhoff spoke immediately after Lori Mullins spoke to point to that $50.2 million cap. When the material came to the BRA shortly thereafter, it reflected that cap. The paperwork was correct. But then there were delays on the project because the developers couldn't get the financing together. And ultimately, they came forward with Mr. Bell Sr. in order to get the financing done, although I believe I was the first person who figured out just minutes before the meeting that that's what was going on. When the bonds were then issued near the end of the year of 2017, the $50.2 million cap was not reflected. And in fact, the developer's attorney had actively changed a very important BRA document that changed that cap within the BRA materials. According to Mark Meadows, the developer's attorney had no legal right to do this, but sort of slipped it under the radar. That didn't change the fact that the council had limited the TIF, which the council had the legal right to do. So the council had, in fact, limited the TIF to $50.2 million. Mr. Meadows at that time did not catch the mistake. Mr. Tom Yaden did not catch the mistake. Mr. Bill Danhoff did not catch the mistake. The BRA had no financial advisors in 2017 for $25 million in bonds. If the BRA had hired a financial advisor, the mistake might have been caught. The $50.2 million cap that was voted through by your predecessors might have been respected and obtained and preserved. On October 2nd, 2020, I asked City Manager George Lahanis why there was no financial advisor brought in for the BRA on $25 million worth of bonds in 2017. His answer was that, quote, due to the limited number of variables on the bond, an advisor was not used by the BRA. The bond placement was private with one potential investor, and the interest rate was established according to the state limit. And that's how we got into this mess. So it seems like it would have been a good idea to have a financial advisor on the bonds, and I would recommend that the City Council pass a policy insisting that when the city is entering into bonds, perhaps more than $20 million, that they should have a financial advisor and not only be relying on the financial advisor who is representing the developers, which is what happened in this case. Brian Leffler, we found out after the closing document was released, was in fact working for the developer's side, not for ours. And by the way, we paid Mr. Leffler out of tax money for representing the other side, $115,000. We also paid the developer's counsel, their side, their lawyers, $353,000, which is what Aaron was just referring to when he talks about white men taking care of white men and making sure they get richer. That is money that would have otherwise gone to CATA, money that otherwise would have gone to LCC, money that otherwise would have gone to the pensions of the workers of the City of East Lansing. The closing statement this time around shows that we're paying Miller Canfield $120,000. In 2017, we paid Miller Canfield $155,000 for the bond work. It seems like it's high time to do something I've been asking for a long time, which is to bid out for bond counsel, try to get better bond counsel, and get it at a lower price. I think you can almost certainly do so, and the money saved can go to better uses. We were told at the BRA that Miller Canfield would give us a discount this time, that the BRA would only be paying around $80,000 to $100,000. In fact, this time around, they're paying $120,000 out of tax money. And the most significant thing, again, is that Miller Canfield has failed to defend the $50.2 million cap. Miller Canfield has effectively defended Miller Canfield while being paid for by our money. This council has apparently chosen not to attempt to defend that cap, something that I think is problematic. We've now paid Brian Leffler again out of the next bond, $47,500, and a good reason to wonder why on earth we keep paying the other side's people. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the caller? comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Trigger. Emily, would you mind letting in the next caller?
Yes, the next caller on the line is it Rania Sophia Murphy?
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, I didn't have anything to say. I'm here as a student in East
Okay.
Lansing School.
Great. Thanks. Welcome. Thanks for being with us.
Yes.
Emily, would you mind letting in the next caller if there is one?
Those are all the callers we have on the line.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right. I will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is communications from the mayor and council members. And I always switch this up. And I'm going to start with Councilmember Bacon. I just look for the one who's most, looks like they're not ready. No, I'm just kidding.
That was pretty accurate today.
Sorry.
No, just not a whole lot of comments. I know our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I just wanted to point out December is a big month built around diversity, equity, and inclusion. Wanted to give some credence to World AIDS Day as we think about, being in a global pandemic, one of the original pandemics of our modern era, still going on today. And I just wanted to give credence to that. December 2nd, International Day of Abolition of Slavery. December is really chock full of these types of times to give memory to these things and events. And December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day, remembrance of Pearl Harbor. Just wanted to give some credence to that as well. That's kind of all I had today. And just hope everyone had a great and healthy and happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you very much, sir. Councilmember Babcock.
Thank you. First off, I would like to congratulate our own irreplaceable and unmatched Ms. Elaine Hardy for winning the Liberty Bell Award, which is the Ingham County Bar Association's award for a non-lawyer who has done phenomenal things to advance the law.
Wow.
And I only wish that I had written the nomination myself. So I am absolutely thrilled and cannot think of anyone more deserving.
I didn't know that happened. That's really great to bring up. Thanks.
Yeah. And as I was thinking about it, she's attracting some attention, and the City of East Lansing is attracting some attention because we have recently named her our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Director. However, the roots go deep, and a year ago, and well before that, Ms. Hardy has been deeply invested in all of these things without the title. So I think that this recognition is actually long overdue and certainly commendable. Speaking of being a lawyer and reaching to Dr. Sousa and Ms. Drager's comments earlier, it's a strange thing about going to law school. When you go to law school, they teach you in what they call the Socratic method, which is you stand up and they fire questions at you until you have to say, I don't know. And saying you don't know is a point of great humiliation. Saying you don't understand is worse. And when you know that, that makes a lot of sense. You see how attorneys are socialized, and you realize how rare it is to hear one say, I don't know, or to ask, I don't understand. And the past 48 hours of my life, 24 plus, I have been struggling with this bond issue, and it is hard for me to say, I don't understand. I don't know, but there's a lot in there that I really had to work to understand, some of which I still don't understand. And I am aware, called out on Twitter, I am aware that my initial response to the $47,500 from Mr. Leffler was incorrect. My eye skipped over it, and I thought that we were using that to pay our advisor, which seemed perfectly appropriate. It is perfectly legal to pay Mr. Leffler out of our DDA and BRA funds, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I'm asking myself, how many times, how have I failed by not saying I don't understand often enough? Because I am displeased. I have immense respect for Mr. Dewan and Mr. Kroom, who were negotiating that. But I don't think this is a moment we're going to be especially proud of looking back. We can do better. And if that means saying publicly, I don't understand, or if that means asking more questions, then I guess we're going to have to do that. And about asking questions, it doesn't matter who originally raises the question. The question is this important for the community to know? And how do we get them the answer? It doesn't matter who is behind the question. What matters is that we get an answer for the community members who deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Babcock. Yeah, I just want to touch on one point that was made by Dr. Drager as well as made by you. You know, I'm not an attorney, and I'm certainly not the city's bond counsel. So I too had questions regarding this, and actually, you know, one of the reasons why I wanted us to have our own financial advisor is because I think that it was important. I think that at the end of the day, you know, this is a newer council that wasn't. In fact, nobody on this council was part of that original bond issuance. We have institutional knowledge here, of course, within our staff, but I think that hiring our own financial advisor was something that was pertinent, and I think that it was important. And honestly, their advice helped me understand a good amount more about the bond reissuance or refinancing and what we're doing. I'd be interested to see, you know, there was a point about making a policy specifically on having our own financial advisor for, you know, transactions that are above a certain limit. I think that's a valid conversation. I'd be willing to have it. But yeah, that's really just my response overall to those comments. But George, did you have anything that you wanted to?
Mayor, unless people have specific questions for our bond counsel, I don't have any statements. We've already reviewed that, but the bond counsel is available if we have questions.
Okay. All right. Then I will go to which one, Mayor Pro Tem or Councilmember Watson? All right, Councilmember Watson. There we go.
I'm ready. Thank you for your comments, Councilmember Babcock. I appreciate what you said. And I meet with the mayor later on this week. And one of my first questions was going to be how you do figure stuff out when it's not one of your strengths with this big issue. And I appreciate the callers, and I just appreciate information from different angles. And the only other thing I wanted to say is it's Giving Tuesday. Happy Giving Tuesday. If you haven't given already to some nonprofits or some folks, you still have time. And giving doesn't have to be monetary. It can be volunteering your time. It could be promoting someone on social media. But happy Giving Tuesday, everyone. That's all.
Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you for mentioning that. Councilmember Watson, I didn't know that. Mayor Pro Tem.
Hey, I wasn't necessarily planning to address the bond issue. I don't have a deep, meaningful anything to add to the conversation. I guess I kind of do. You know, as a council, we inherit a lot of things from the councils that go before us. So, you know, councils before us pass laws that it is then our duty to implement. They also make contracts that it is our duty to honor. And so this issue to me comes down to what is written in that contract. There's actually a lot about the way that this deal was structured that I don't like. But that is not part of my decision in whether or not, and honestly, it wasn't a decision anyway, this rested with the VRA, but in terms of whether this was something that we should fight or support, to me, that comes down to what's written in that contract. And what was passed today by the BRA is supported by the contract that was signed. The previous council authorized Mark Meadows, who was the mayor at the time, to sign on their behalf. He signed the document, and I feel bound by that as a representative of the city. So I very much, feel Mr. Souza's point in regards to TIF money. I actually feel a high level of responsibility towards the taxes that are leveraged by other jurisdictions. I've served on bodies that have had their millages siphoned, shall we say, by TIFs in other communities. We've also seen communities in our area get severely underwater in agreements that they probably shouldn't have made in regard to TIF. I think of that as being a tool that can drive a certain type of development. Sometimes that's very critical for the community, and it's worth doing that. But essentially, it's borrowing on credit. It's making an investment that you are looking to future income to pay for. And that is something that we should not do lightly. And we should also, when we make those decisions, consider the fact that we are using other jurisdictions' money to pay for it. So I can't say what would have happened if this council had been the council that made that contract. And I can't say that I love every part of it or that I appreciate being bound to the terms of it. But I can say that as I read it, I feel legally bound to uphold it. So I guess that's what I have to say about that. So now I'm going to talk about something that I'm actually excited about, which is the Downtown Management Board has signed on with a company who will facilitate a downtown gift card program, which is something that we've been looking at trying to figure out how to do since the very beginning of the pandemic. So it's a third-party company. When these cards come to participating vendors will have to sign up to be a part of it. They're not going to be expected to obligate this unless they opt into the program, which I very much hope that many of our downtown businesses do, because it's structured in a way that's really very little risk to them. It will essentially just be a credit card transaction, just as anybody coming into their store would run a credit card. But what's exciting to me is that we've been able to dedicate some of the money from the Downtown Management Board's budget as an incentive program. So when our residents and citizens purchase a card through this program, which will be on a portal, a city-supported portal, then they'll get an additional little credit to spend. So if you spend $25, you'll get an additional $10 worth of credit to spend at our downtown businesses, which is not a lot, but it is definitely something to drive some traffic downtown. I hope that people will take advantage of it as part of their gift giving over the holiday. That is going to launch on December 11th, and there will be much more information coming out about that as it gets closer to that time. Right now, we are working to sign up vendors. So I don't know how many downtown business owners we have watching this riveting meeting, but if you are and you'd like more information about that, please get in touch with Amy Schritzler-Smith from our planning staff, or myself. I can help you, or really anybody within the economic development team at the city, and they can get you help getting signed up. So we really hope that many of our downtown businesses opt in. We really hope that our residents take advantage of the opportunity to support our downtown businesses with their gift giving this holiday season. I think it's a fun way for people to give a present that can be redeemed at many different stores, hopefully discover some businesses that they maybe haven't had a chance to discover before. So anyway, we talked about that in DMB today. It's something I'm really excited about and very excited to share with you. So that's it for me today. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. All right, so I have a few things that I wanted to talk about. First thing is I tried this a little bit, probably about a week or two ago, where it's difficult. I want to try and be as accessible as possible. But of course, with the COVID-19 pandemic, it's difficult to obviously host in-person events. Virtual events are difficult to manage just because of, let's say, some internet trolls that tend to want to make noise in the wrong places. And of course, me not wanting to exacerbate that issue, it's difficult to figure out a medium where I can, be responsive to folks and be available, but not necessarily, have too much on my own personal plate to manage to do that. And one of the ways that I thought was cool was maybe to do a live event. So I did a live event on my mayor's Facebook. I had about 20 people that were there in the beginning, a few questions asked that were great. And then it tapered off. And for about 30 minutes, I was just saying over and over again, if you have questions, put them in the chat. And I would talk about random topics, but it might not have been the most entertaining to watch, let's say. So my pitch was to the mayor pro tem, we connect, and I try to connect with every individual council member on a regular basis. What might be cool is if we did our check-in, but we did it live. And so this Saturday at 2 p.m. on my Facebook page, it's facebook.com/AaronStevensEL. Myself and the mayor pro tem are going to be having a live conversation where we might just be talking about city issues or our opinions on different things that are happening, but we're also just going to be responding to questions that come into the chat. It's a somewhat awkward experience. I'm a little bit nervous about it, and I know the mayor pro tem is too, but I think it's a cool way.
I think it's going to be fun.
I think it's a cool way to show a little bit more humility and definitely be more accessible. So I'm going to try to do that, and then I'm going to rope other council members into doing the same thing with me if it works out. So Saturday at 2 p.m. I hope to see you there. Not trying to campaign or anything. This is really just for city business stuff. So next thing I wanted to talk about, we've got a disorderly conduct ordinance on our agenda today. And I'm going to talk about it when we get to it. But I really just wanted to give a big thank you to folks like Chuck Grigsby, Crystal Davis, Karen Honey, entire HRC, Elaine Hardy, our chief of police, our deputy chief of police, George, Robert Easterly, our part of our new legal team, and of course Elaine Hardy, for working through, and Ron Bacon, of course, for doing everything. And long meetings, definitely, but I think that we came to a really, really good result. And I had talked to Chuck and Crystal earlier yesterday, just, letting them know it was on the agenda for today. Just really, I'm just inspired to be on this council kind of every day. And just, today I even testified at a House Judicial Committee hearing regarding the arrest record issue that we talked about earlier. Thank you, Nell Kumich, for pushing that. And just, everything that we're doing is really, really powerful, and I'm just proud to be part of this council. So thanks to everybody that had a part in this. If I forgot somebody, I apologize. I know that there's a lot of people that did a lot of really great work. Elaine's getting a lot of recognition too, that I know Lisa just said, but it's well deserved. I mean, just incredibly well deserved. So the one thing else I'm gonna touch on very, very briefly, because it is new to me as well, is the issue of on-campus living for sophomores that recently came out today regarding MSU. And maybe a somewhat different perspective, because I do have my own anxiety around it in terms of housing issues. And that's certainly, it's certainly on my mind in terms of our market. But I talked to Councilmember Bacon about this a little bit, and maybe a perspective that I'll offer. So when I was running for council back in 2017, I talked a lot to community stakeholders, folks that are at ASMSU even, or folks like Sue Webster, who is really, really incredible over at MSU, about how do we create that transition from living on campus in the dorms to living in a neighborhood, right? How do we create the sense of responsibility that you're not in a dorm anymore, you're actually within a community, and there's other responsibilities that come with that. And one of the problems that you always have is that people are signing leases super early. You're basically 3 weeks into the semester and already trying to sign a lease with people you maybe even have just known for 3 weeks, right? I think this might present some opportunities. We're gonna see what comes out of this. I want to get a little bit more information on numbers, on how how many people this is really going to take out of East Lansing. Of course, it's not just East Lansing it's going to be affected by this. It's other surrounding communities that have housing markets that are going to be affected. But this does present an opportunity for us. And I think that one silver lining of this entire situation with COVID has been really reevaluating the processes here at the City of East Lansing, as well as processes over at MSU in terms of academic conduct, both on and off campus. And I also think that I think there's a new wave coming at MSU right now in that sense. And I think the wall between Grand River and us is crumbling down slowly. And I appreciate the work that's being done there. I think this presents some interesting opportunities for us. So excited to work with MSU folks on that. I'm sure we're going to be part of more conversations in the coming months and weeks going forward. That's really all I had for right now. I will move on to our city manager's report. George?
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to talk about the continued closure of the city offices. I think everyone's aware that the closure goes until next week, Wednesday. At this point, I think that it's pretty safe to assume that staff are planning for a continuation of that, whether it's from the state of Michigan or from our own initiative. I think that it's reasonable to expect that city staff work remotely where they can. Obviously, I say remotely, a majority of our employees continue to serve in the exact same function they were before, which is frontline public works, police, fire, EMS, are all functioning as normal because they really cannot do their job remotely, and their job is essential to continue serving the community. That includes the water treatment, water resource recovery facility as well under public works. So those facilities and operations run as normal. Hopefully all of our residents, if you need to interact with the City of East Lansing in any way, through our web, through phone, through email, you're able to connect with the staff who are all working remotely to have your needs addressed. And we will continue to serve remotely as best we can. I would expect to see as little fall off in our service level as possible. Obviously, there's going to be some disruption in terms of not being able to come into the building directly, but our initiative and our direction is to make as little disruption as possible during this period. So I would expect for a continuation likely, but we'll continue to look at that and be communicating with our residents in the coming days. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, City Manager. And just as one council member, I would say that I think that's the right approach, and I appreciate everything we can do to try and keep folks safe. Our frontline workers obviously are in a difficult spot, and there's a lot of frontline workers right now that are there in the same position. So appreciate that. Next is our City Attorney's report. Mr. Homier.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to bring to your attention a couple of things, one of which is the city's local state of emergency currently runs through December 31st. And the Open Meetings Act, the ability to have electronic meetings gets narrowed after January 1st, unless you have extended that local state of emergency. And so I don't think, given what's going on right now, at least none of my clients anticipate getting back in a room together. I would fully expect that MDHHS is going to modify their current order, which runs through December the 8th. I missed the governor's press conference today, but I don't think anything came out of that substantively based on that order. So we are looking ahead, obviously, into January, end of December, January, to determine what's going to happen. And today, there's another House bill that's pending. It's actually House Bill 6207, which would further amend the Open Meetings Act, actually amend the amendments that were PA 228 of 2020, which would allow you to continue holding electronic meetings for any purpose through the end of March. And then after March, then it would allow you to continue holding electronic meetings if you had a local state of emergency. So I don't know yet what's going to happen with that bill, but I anticipate that these local states of emergency may have to continue into January of next year. So we'll want to address that probably after December 8th, when the current order is either going to be extended or run out, and determine after that how we're going to proceed forward. Because I don't have one municipal client that thinks it's a good idea to cram a bunch of people indoors at an in-person meeting. So
yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, sir. And I just say, and I know that there's probably not any state representatives watching right now, but since I was down at the Capitol today, this is an issue that shouldn't be partisan. Really, what you're talking about here is access to your elected officials in a safe way. The Open Meetings Act, the spirit of that is to make sure that folks have access to the decision makers when they're making decisions. And the God honest truth is that we need help to do that. And we need to make sure that we are able to hold meetings virtually to keep people safe. I talked to a couple of representatives about it. I know that we're working with MML on the issue, and our lobbyist is pushing it very, very heavily. But this is something that needs to get passed. This is something that needs to be able, and it shouldn't be a partisan issue. This is just making sure that folks can keep doing the work that we need to do to keep the city running. And so just hoping that goes through. Thank you, Mr. Homier, for bringing it up.
you're welcome.
Okay. I am going to move on to our consent agenda, and that is Mr. Lahanas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. We have the following items on the consent agenda for council consideration. Item 3.1, approve the following appointments or reappointments to boards or commissions. 1, Cliff Walls to the Commission on the Environment for a full term ending December 31st, 2023. 2, Cheryl Schmidt to the Commission on the Environment for a full term ending December 31st, 2023. 3, Jessica Crawford to the Commission on the Environment for a full term ending December 31st, 2023. 4, Scott House to the East Lansing Meridian Water Sewer Authority for a full term ending December 31st, 2023. 5, Larry Cross to the Building Board of Appeals for a full term ending December 31st, 2023. 6, Liz Harrow to the Building Board of Appeals for a full term ending December 31st, 2023. 7, Tim Merzowski to the Building Board of Appeals for a full term ending December 31st, 2023. 8, John Boyce to the Transportation Commission for a full term ending December 31st, 2023. 9, Nicole McPherson to the East Lansing Meridian Water Sewer Authority as an alternate for a full term ending December 31st, 2023. Item 3.2, approve a municipal employees retirement system MERS addendums to the City of East Lansing MERS defined benefit, defined contribution, and hybrid retirement plans. Item 3.3, approve traffic control order 487 to correct and clarify traffic control order 486 for the implementation of the parking restrictions on Ardson Road and Marshall Street based on the neighborhood ballot results. Item 3.4, approve a conflict waiver for Foster Swift, Collins, and Smith PC to represent the City of East Lansing regarding the personal property tax exemptions and related development approvals requested by TechSmith Corporation. Those are all the items on the consent agenda for council's consideration.
Thank you, sir. Does anybody want any item taken off the consent agenda? Go ahead, Councilmember
I
Babcock.
actually don't want anything taken off, but I was remiss earlier. All of these folks are on boards I liaise with. They're all spectacular people, and it's great to have them back. I was remiss earlier. I meant to mention it in my comments.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Babcock. All right. If nobody wants anything taken off the agenda, I'll look for our consent agenda for a motion. Go ahead.
The MERS, I was curious, do your unions vote on the deal with the MERS, or do employees vote on it?
Yeah, so this is not actually a benefit change in any respect. It's simply requiring, MERS had a requirement that we sort of reaffirm all the parameters of our plans for them. So it's an administrative document.
Okay.
I can call the HR director on if you have a more detailed explanation, but there isn't any change to our plans whatsoever.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Watson, would you like to have a further clarification from our HR director?
No, what George says makes sense. And so if it was huge changes or something like that, I was definitely curious if the unions weighed in and if employees had a chance to weigh in.
Yeah.
Great.
If there were any changes, they would have to be bargained by the unions with their approval and city council's approval for specific benefit changes. And that would come to you specifically. So that's not a part of that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have something?
I might have had a complete like out of body experience. Did we talk about the closed session during council communications?
I was gonna talk about that at the end of the meeting.
Okay, well, just because in the agenda it's in a different spot.
I clarified with our city attorney right before the meeting that I am all right to make that motion at the end, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, that's a new system change, and wanted to make sure we weren't missing it. Thanks.
Appreciate it.
That's all.
Okay. Is there a motion on the consent agenda? Go ahead, Council.
I move we approve all items on the consent agenda.
Great. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Motion by Councilmember Babcock, seconded by Councilmember Bacon. Any discussion? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. All right. That passes. Our next item is our business agenda, consideration of revised ordinance 1491, our disorderly conduct code. And our department is our city attorney. Is this Easterly or Mike Homer?
That'll be Robert.
Okay. Mr. Easterly, welcome to the call.
How you doing?
Good to see you.
Good, you as well. It's good to be here. It was the first time I got to join from inside. I've watched the last few of these things from the YouTube links. So.
And Mr. Easterly, since this is your first time, if you wouldn't mind just introducing yourself to the council and community, go for it.
Robert Easterly, I'm the assistant city attorney. I'm at Foster Swift, Collins and Smith. I'm primarily responsible for the district court prosecutions. So that's everything from the civil docket, the misdemeanor docket, as well as we handle the housing docket and parking docket there as well.
Great. All right. Feel free.
Thank you. We're going through the through the new ordinance at this point.
You by no means have to go through it line by line, but if you want to give a general overview, the work that has gone in so far and be available for questions, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Well, I know that there were a set of recommendations that came from the City Council, a set of recommendations that also came from the Human Rights Commission and Committee. There were 2 or 3 meetings that brought together other stakeholders, including the police, the chief of police, the deputy chief, several other community members from coalitions, and then there were let's see, I think Mayor, you attended 1 or 2 of those meetings. Mr. Lahanis was at 1 or 2 of those meetings. And so it was quite a bit of an array of people in the room. I think the overall, the overarching theme was a desire to see the disorderly conduct code be a little bit more defined and to review how and when it was used. I think we got to a place, although there were definitely some changes in the language, I think the other thing that was expressed and addressed repeatedly was a review of how frequently that code is used, who it's most frequently used with or against in some aspects. And I think that there was a lot of really good dialogue around that and a lot of good representation from a number of different components of our community and our city government who weighed in. And I think that what you have now is a bit more of a zeroed in resisting and obstructing component there. I think that you have a bit more of a defined look in here as it relates to what is classified as a protest versus a riot. These were kind of some of the high points in here. And I know that we're not reviewing this line by line at this point, but it was really, making sure that there were not redundancies inside of the statute itself, and that it really captured behavior that's critical to make sure that we are reviewing and protects the city, protects the constituents. But also is not overly used or abused as it relates to the way that our community is policed. And I think that I think that there was a good meeting of the minds as it relates to those concepts. And I think that the changes that were placed in there were both necessary and appropriate.
Great. Appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Easterly? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I just had a question comment. There's a few, I am really pleased with the format that this is in. I think it's a very comprehensive hybrid of the many discussions that we had on this. It was a very, it was kind of a, I don't know, it was a good outing, I guess, in terms of addressing some other parts of our code as well. This is something that is important to me. And I think in conversations I've had with Mayor Stevens, I think he's motivated to do some cleaning up in other areas of our code as well. And I think this was a great first outing to kind of see how this works, to engage people, and then also still kind of understand that we need a document in the end of it that is enforceable and that is going to, you know, be used the way that we need it to be used. My only comment is there's a few chapters, number 1 and then like number 6, that still have the word reserved in the very end of the paragraph. And I'm wondering if that was left over from a previous draft or if that was deliberate.
Those were left over from a previous draft.
Okay, I saw it in chapter 1. I saw it in number 6, and then there was another one. 19 has still got it. Subsection D under number 31 has got it. And so I don't know if we can kind of amend the way that we pass this to edit those out as part of our amendment, to just make sure that those don't pass in and create any confusion. But otherwise, I'm very pleased with the way that this has come forward.
Yeah. You know what? When we go through this, Mr. Easterly, I might make some amendments, and I'd look to your guidance to make sure that we're making the right amendments on this.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Councilmember Bacon.
I think having sat in at least 1 to 2 of the meetings with Mr. Easterly, just understanding, you know, along with the revision of code and that type of thing, a lot of this comes down to the spirit, interpretation, and a lot of other parts of the law and how it's viewed in our community. And I guess that's the second part of what has to take place as we continue to revise code and make a lot of the beautiful updates and changes that we're making. His legal eye was very acute and very keen, and it was good to get that perspective from him. But just ultimately, I'll have to use his own words. Technically, you could be charged with whatever police feel like charging you with. So ultimately, the goal here is that this is accepted across the board, and the people that were in the room with the chief being there, the deputy chief, and Mr. Lahanis, and the many hours and back and forth and tons of perspectives. This was not taken lightly. This was a great deal of heavy lifting and work from both the Human Rights Commission initially, the second markups and third and fourth, and just many back and forth changes. I just want to say there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in this document, and I hope it is interpreted well and received well by the community.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Councilmember Watson.
Just a quick question, just a reminder. When I see reserved next to a number like 24, does that mean as is?
No, that means that the entire clause was struck.
Thank you. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. If there's no more discussion or questions for Mr. Easterly, I'll take a motion on this item, and I have a few amendments that I'd like to.
Okay, I have a question then.
Yep. Oh, go.
Okay, so number 4. In number 19, why do we need 19 if we have 4?
So there's one distinct difference there. One has to do with the time of day, which does not necessarily seem like a huge thing, but it is. I think that there was also a component in here for permission to the owner of the premises in the 19. 19 was 19 is specific to private property, private premises as well. So that one speaks more to someone literally being on the premises at your home, at your private residence, right? The private premises, where the other one I think is a little bit more general to property, and it does not have the.
Sorry, Mr. Easterly, just a clarification. I actually had thought that we had struck number 19 and then actually put it into number 4 based on my recollection. Is that the?
No, both 4 and 19 are still.
Because 4 has the exact same language as 19, if I'm reading it correctly.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that one had a reserve. That was supposed to be struck strictly.
Okay.
Mr. Easterly, is there a possibility that this is an earlier draft? One that's presented on the council agenda?
I don't think so.
Okay.
14. No, I think that was the. Draft. We sent it over last week.
Okay.
Right,
okay.
Go ahead, Councilmember Wilson.
I have one more just kind of similar question, and that's 10E. Why do we need 10E when we have 18?
So 10E is specific to the gathering or assembling, whereas 18 does not have that requirement at all. So if you could physically obstruct, and we did spend a lot of time on the physically obstructing and resisting and hindering. That was one of the ones we spent a great deal of time on, and ran through a number of examples legally of how that plays out. But 10E is specific to the inappropriate assembly.
It's in the riot clause basically. So the when something's declared a riot, there were these provisions, and I would say for the purposes of this section, a purpose other than an on-duty law enforcement officer remains at a riot with intent to advance its purposes if they participate in the riot by committing or attempting to commit any of the following acts. So they to be arrested basically under that riot clause, you would have had to have done something like this. So it was a very specific provision in what that riot clause was to say this is an example of something to advance that riot. So that wouldn't be a normal situation. That would be when something was declared a riot specifically.
One of the things I think
Oh,
was
go
both groups of folks that were represented was, places where behavior really needed to be enumerated and specified, and was not so broad that someone could be, this could be used inappropriately against them. And so they really drilled in on specific acts, enumerated actions for that section, for that larger section.
Go ahead, Councilmember Babcock, and then I'll go back to Councilmember Watson.
Thank you. Mr. Easterly, it's been a few years, but our old friend furnishing false information. Yeah, that knowing laugh. So I recall it being both legal and not legal, and up to some debate a few years ago, last when I dealt with it. Has that been resolved at the state level? Are you comfortable with 29 the way it's written?
Yeah, we talked about that one fairly extensively as well, for a couple of different reasons. I mean, the problem is at the state level, you get into a much higher penalty.
Absolutely.
So we were comfortable. I think the group was comfortable having run through that one with the language there. Again, there were a couple of these that we really spent time talking about. A second level piece, which may be engaging the police, force in terms of training and in terms of training and policy. And I think there was great discussion around that. But as relates to the language specific to the statute, I think the group was okay with that one as well.
I live for lesser includeds. Lesser includeds save the day, and it's a hard argument to make, but
Indeed.
I agree.
Councilmember Watson.
So I was going to bring this up during discussion too, but since we talked about the whole rioting thing and E, I want to talk about D and why a female exposing her breasts incites a riot and why that female gets charged for it.
Mr. Easterly, do you mind if I take this? Actually, Councilmember Watson, this is a point of contention for me as well. If you'll actually notice on point 2, it was very similar language originally as well. And point 2, that's not under the riot clause. It's just in prohibited acts. Willfully expose one's buttocks or genitalia in any public place. And that originally had the language in regards to female exposing her breasts. And quite frankly, I wasn't comfortable with that language. And I think most people in the room were as well. It was made an argument to us that during a riot situation that can exacerbate the situation. Maybe the chief or deputy chief could explain it a little bit better. But if the council wants to move forward with a change on that, I'm not going to say no. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, I don't think a female exposing her chest should be penalized any differently than a male exposing their chest. And I don't see the issue being a female showing her breasts. I see the issue being the people that get some type of rise out of it. Those should be the people that should be charged, not female exposing her breasts, unless we'd like to add males exposing their chest.
Councilmember Watson, I think that is a great policy point, and if you make that amendment, I will be the second. But Mr. Lahanas.
It isn't that uncommon during the riots to have men take off their shirts and swing the shirts around and begin to try to rile up the crowd as well. So maybe it is a fair and gender neutral way of saying removing your top for the purpose of creating or advancing the riot. And that does, in the wintertime, we've seen it. The men pull off their shirts just as easily, and it becomes this sort of thing that incites the crowd, and everyone gets worked up about it. So you're kind of right that I do think on either direction, that could actually get people riled up, and then people start to see it as a confrontation again. And that does happen. So perhaps a gender neutral way of saying removing your top for the purpose of exposing your top could be gender neutral and still help to control the riot behavior.
So, Councilmember Watson, did you have a response to that, or can I go to Councilmember Babcock really quick?
Go ahead to Councilmember.
Okay, Councilmember Babcock.
Perhaps we should go with removing an article of clothing, because exposing one's buttocks or genitalia is dropping trow. So I can't believe I have these conversations in public. Anyway.
So I'll tell you, just from my perspective, I would be very comfortable with an amendment that got rid of, that changed basically D to the same thing as item 2. I understand the argument, and it was something that I was willing to compromise on when we were in the room, but we are the final decision makers as this council. We are wonderfully elected to do that. And I agree with you, Councilmember Watson, that gender equality is not just something that we talk about. It's something that we should put in our policy. And I would second that. Go ahead, Councilmember Bacon.
Yeah, I'm in the free the nipple crowd as well.
Yeah,
but I do see with the shirt being taken off as an action of aggression, potentially, like when someone's preparing to egress someone else. I don't know if it particularly needs to be in this area, but that is, that's kind of the dead giveaway if someone's really coming to fight you for something. Those types of people who fight people out in public tend to take their shirt off first for some odd reason. Yeah.
I do the different experience of my council.
Right. I mean, people where I come from, we wear these little cardigans that are all buttoned up. We're not very exciting.
Yeah,
we're hanging out with you.
That's the precursor, but I'm not sure it's critical and definitely not necessary in this line item. I don't know why I even took it there, but yeah, free that nipple.
Well,
go ahead.
If the recommendation is to change it to willfully exposing one's buttocks or genitalia in line with number 2, I think the idea of removing tops is problematic, because the other thing that people do when, for instance, when a control agent is deployed, is take and cover themselves up. And a lot of times talking about, hey, is someone covering their face in order to avoid detection, or are they, literally have just found themselves in the middle of a riot and needed to take their shirt and let it and cover. So
intent.
And if you remove your top at all, you're in trouble.
Yeah, Mr. Easterly, I would not be comfortable with an amendment that just said remove your top in general. Although I do understand the point that the city manager made. I would probably the only amendment I'd be comfortable with is just really getting rid of the last line that says, or if a female exposing their breasts. And Dana, I will 100% let you make that amendment, but I will definitely be the second on it, if so.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Other questions for Mr. Easterly? Go ahead.
I had one question. The one thing that jumped out to me is in chapter 13, knowingly attend, frequent, or operate or loiter in any place where prostitution, gambling, or the illegal sale of intoxicating liquor, blah, blah, blah. Loitering to me is a slippery slope in terms of just, part of the intent, I think, in cleaning up the language of this ordinance is to remove opportunities to kind of just interfere with people because they're undesirable, right? That is something that in past circumstances has been used by these types of clauses, is to just kind of round people up and get them out of an area. So loitering, to me, is one of those words that kind of invites that sort of possibility of misuse. So I guess I don't know if there was any discussion about specifically that part of that clause, or if that was just left in because it was original language.
I have that one. So I've got we're kind of operating off of a 2-color version that was combining the documents. I've got that line stricken out. on both versions, but a check mark saying that the group approved it. So I'm not totally sure if I don't remember us talking about that one. But I would definitely be comfortable with taking out the or loiter in or about.
Yeah, that would be the only amendment that I would offer, is to just strike or loiter from that clause.
Okay. Okay. Other questions for Mr. Easterly?
My last,
Yeah, no, please.
Sorry, I was just going to comment. If that amendment to 10D is accepted by the city council, I'm not sure you need 10D at all, because under 2, willfully exposing one buttocks or genitalia in any public place is already prohibited, which presumably that would be in a public place anyways. So I'm not sure you need that to keep that in at 10D.
So my question for you, Mr. Homier, would be, would the charge kind of be different in that sense, because the clause is under specifically intent to advance the purpose of a riot. So would there be a difference in somebody's charge based off of that, or really would it be the same thing either way?
Well, I suppose the way it's drafted, if you left 10D in there, I suppose you may be able to be charged with both offenses.
Okay, well then that answers that question for me really easily.
Yeah, I mean, willfully exposing, I suspect that would happen under 10D as well. I can't imagine that somebody would be charged with unwillfully, but
That would be a different.
yes.
Councilmember
The unwillful person would be the chargee, not the exposed person.
Yeah. Councilmember Watson.
so with that, I want to ask again, why do we need 10E if we have 18? Can 10E go away also?
And that's a fair question under the same guise, because my understanding was that there'd be a different there. But if there's the possibility that they could get charged for both in that situation, then that's obviously not something that we'd be looking to do. Or at least it wouldn't be my intent to have that as a.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Bacon, you said which one?
This
What?
is.
Yeah, 10E, I was wondering if that can get taken out similarly to what Mr. Homier said, you said, because we have 18. And I want to say one of my other issues with 10E is the walking part, and just kind of imagining why a person might attempt to walk, and why the number 18 makes more sense to me. 10E seems trumped up, and it seems repetitive.
So could I jump in on that, Councilmember? So what happens is, there's a small line of police, like 8 or 10 together in a row, and they're standing close together. And someone runs up to the police and tries to run through the line as a way of riling the crowd to challenge the police. It's a pretty dangerous activity, because to the officers, it looks like someone is charging at them.
Yeah,
And then they try to shuffle through the line and say, I'm just getting through the line. And it has the potential to cause problems for the officers and for the person doing it, because it looks a whole lot like they're running at the police. And so, I mean, I could have the chief come on and also talk about it, but it's, it's a final decision for council. Chief, is the chief available? Can we move him over to panelist?
Just to clarify, Manager Lahanas, I think the point that Councilmember Watson was making is that if the same thing applies, right, running through that line would also, I assume, count as obstructing police in doing their duty, or am I mistaken?
Well, they can say, I mean, that's a matter for Mr. Easterly to explain, but I think it's pretty clear to say that running through the police line is a problem, that you shouldn't be doing it because it's a direct situation where you're riling everybody up against the police. So it seems to be particularly problematic. If there's other ways you can leave, you don't have to run through the police line. But Chief, did you want to weigh in or?
Yeah, Mr. Lahanas, good evening, Council. I appreciate the time of your time tonight. The Deputy Chief is also on for answering questions, but this the City Manager is very correct reference. Our police lines normally 8 up to 16 people across, but before we even get to that line, before we start moving that crowd, we have made numerous announcements for them to clear the area. And for them to, and we give them an avenue of escape or how to leave the area. We give them an amount of time, how long they have to leave the area. And they're still there, then we advance the line. And the people are still in the area, and there are people who are trying to rile the crowd up to say, well, they want to confront the police line. And as we move in that police line, we have to either take them to jail because of disobeying an order, or we let them get behind us. And we cannot allow anyone to get behind us for safety purposes. So they have had ample opportunity to leave that area. And so people are still in that area. We know that they are trying to prevent us from doing our job.
Can I ask you just a point of clarification? I think speaking to, and if I'm misrepresenting your question, Dana, jump in, but I think the question is, we have physically obstruct, resist, or hinder any member of the police force, any police officer or firefighter in the discharge of their lawful duties. And then, so in that situation that you've described where you have a police line and somebody is physically trying to break that line, couldn't we all just also, I mean, like I guess in the description that you just say, it's also covered under Chapter G, remaining on a street, sidewalk, or other public property after a public announcement has been made over a loudspeaker. So I think, if the intent is, sorry, there's something on my screen and it's bothering me. If the intent is to, determine whether a specific individual is on site inciting a riot, if we have one way of charging them under a certain chapter or under a separate part of the disorderly conduct code, do we need to have it repeated? So is it, in the situation that you've described, whether they're charging the police line or not, they're clearly remaining on the street after the announcement has been made. And so do we need to specify that specific behavior, especially since it seems to be covered under Chapter 19, when we already have a way of charging them with what we need to charge them with?
Yep, Councilmember, Mayor Pro Tem, you're absolutely correct, and Councilman Watson, it's a great observation. And sometimes the police, the disorderly, when we have a riot or unlawful assembly, we tend to look at things a little differently. But there are other subsections in there that we could arrest someone who is preventing us from doing our job. I mean, that is in there. So I guess that's a possibility for us to do that. Deputy Chief, have anything else to add on that? I'm good with that.
Great. Go ahead, Councilmember Babcock. Oh, sorry, City Attorney, do you have something on that?
Yeah, so it seems to me that Councilmember Watson's right, that in terms of looking at 10E versus 18, I would assume that under 18, and I don't pretend to be a criminal lawyer, but under 18, if you were walking or running through a police line, that would be the same as physically obstructing, resisting, or hindering any member of the police doing their job, which would fall under 18 as well.
That's correct.
So we had a discussion about that. I mean, recently, do you see any difference in the prosecution of that? Because, I mean, we've looked at a lot of these videos, and I kind of see when people go up to the police line, they're not really trying to go away. They're trying to incite the crowd and challenge the police. So running through the line is a bit different than trying to leave. But if that's the will of council, I just think that in terms of prosecuting somebody for the specific action of having it articulated has some merit. I don't know if Mr. Eastley, if you have anything to add to that.
I agree. I mean, I think we did talk about that one quite a bit. And I think part of the decision to leave it in there with counsel from the police was that, again, one of the things that we want to do to protect citizens is in some instances, give them a very specific or enumerated action. So there's lots that could fall under physically obstructing, resisting, or hindering that doesn't have anything to do with walking through a police line. There are all types of things that occur there. As we're talking about the riot portion of this, I think, after talking through it as a group, the consensus was essentially, if you've got somebody that is trying to walk through a police line in the middle of a riot, that's a problem, and we want people to know that it's a problem. Because if you don't put that there, and so again, if the example is, there's a riot occurring and there's now a police line formed, and you've got a citizen who says, well, I'm leaving, but I'm going to leave through here, and they had absolutely no intention to obstruct or to resist the police. They just decided they were going to go this direction and leave through here. I may have a different time with 18 with that, versus if the riot code says, if you do this enumerated act, this is a violation of that section of this code. I think it's important for citizens to know that.
Yeah, the only issue I have with that is that E says for the purposes of obstructing.
Right.
And so it's not just somebody who says I'm leaving and going this way. It's for that specific purpose of obstructing, which sort of then gets into 18 and why, I think they're repetitive. If somebody is physically obstructing, resisting, or hindering any police force, any peace officer or firefighter in the discharge of their lawful duties, that is a crime, regardless of whether it's walking through a police line or running through a police line. If it is obstructing or hindering their ability to do their job, then it is a chargeable offense.
I agree. I don't disagree with that.
And we wouldn't have a problem taking E out. That would, it's covered number in 18, and the police department, we can live with that, having E striking.
Okay, Councilmember Babcock, and then Mayor Pro Tem.
I would simply say, generally speaking, based on my experience, if you want to limit the things people can be arrested for, charged with, convicted of, you have very specific language. Because as a defense attorney, I would say, hindering, we don't know what hindering is, but we know what walking through the line is, right? We'll see the video, we'll know what happened. If the language says that and doesn't use the word hindering, like that's what happened. If the language says hindering, well, what's hindering? Hey, I think I'll just go over there and hinder Mr. Bacon's progress between me and the coffee machine. Am I annoying him? Am I hindering him? Am I chatting with him? And I've represented clients who were not MSU students, but magically found themselves on campus at terrible moments and were part of the proceedings. And it's always this very juvenile. Well, one guy said, I just wanted to shake hands with the officer. The officer had told him to leave 3 times, and he turns around. He's like, well, I just want to shake hands with you. Bang, the cuffs go on. Because hindering, you get into these very fungible, childish arguments. So
a big portion of the conversation was how frequently the resisting and obstructing is used. And so in the context of a riot, I think part of the discussion was what we don't want to do is create more spaces where the resisting and obstructing could be overused. There's a specific act that if you do this in this context, in this environment, that you have reached a level of culpability. I'm not saying that I don't think that it's included in 18 or that it's not slightly redundant. I know from the conversation, we kind of spent a lot of time with, what is physically obstructing, resisting, and hindering, how frequently that's used, how frequently that's slapped on to, other charges, that sort of thing. In this context, the discussion was about specific behavior that needed to be delineated. So.
Go ahead, Councilmember Bacon. And then Councilmember Watson. Sorry.
Yeah, I remember specifically part of the conversation. It's important even to keep the crowd safe in the riot situation, that they're able to multiply force with the amount of people that are there, and someone breaking the line or walking through the line specifically breaks that force multiplier, which is actually what's key, because they're technically probably outnumbered. So part of it is the appearance and the line. So the walking through the line specifically was part of that, was what that was for in the riot situation from the presentation. And when we were kind of talking through this in the group session, so that it did have really specific language, because it's really specific to keep the integrity of that line. And as they're trying to remove a crowd that's probably potentially very large, and they were probably very much outnumbered. So this could be part of more of the officer safety side on that side of it, and kind of to Lisa's point as well. Leaving the interpretation part out of it. If you break this line, it is what it is. So,
Councilmember Watson.
Okay, I just my give. So I wanted to ask about 10E and why we needed it. And I hear what you all are saying, but one of my points was the walking. So most of you probably played Red Rover when you were younger, right? And that was without police, without riot gear, without shield, without their strong selves. And when I played Red Rover, I had to bolt through the line. And so I can't imagine someone causing so much trouble walking through a police line. And I also think about pictures I've seen from the summertime about what was happening and the relationships that were happening during the protests. And so my give would just be take out the walk part, and the number 18 is there, or take out all of 10E. A person walking through the line isn't, when I imagine it, that's not causing the harm that a person or persons running through might be able to do.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I think thinking back to one of the comments, I believe it was from Chief Johnson earlier, about advancing the line and not allowing anybody to be behind the police line in a riot situation. And so walking through the line would still accomplish that. They would be where they didn't want them to be in terms of officer safety. Maybe breaking through a police line or pushing through a police line, anything that would imply that we don't want them to be behind it. I guess my question is, I have never participated in a riot, and I have certainly never policed one. Just general lack of experience, but I'm young, there's time. Is this a common enough occurrence in that situation, people pushing up against the police line and trying to pass through it, that it would warrant an individual demarcation under this chapter?
And to add on to the Mayor Pro Tem's question, if you don't mind, I want to keep it in context with East Lansing specifically, because what we're talking about, especially when we're talking about this riot provision, is not, we're talking about sports riots, really. And, just to be very frank about the issue, we're not talking about, we're talking about what happened, U of M game, right, where there's a very large gathering and Cedar Village fires, that kind of thing. So I want to keep that in East Lansing context as well, with the Mayor Pro Tem's question, which I think is a good question.
I'd like the chief or deputy chief to answer, but from my perspective, I've been up on the roof. I've been watching videos during live cameras of a lot of these and been out there for a lot of these. And people stay away from the line unless they're there to challenge the line. People don't accidentally go walk through a line of 8 police in riot gear. It's very clear where to go and where not to go. So when they do that, it seems pretty clear that they're trying to disrupt, incite, show the police, you're not going to push me off the street, I'm going to push you off the street. And I just think it's a much different feel than what we're saying here. You have 8 police standing potentially in front of 500 people. And if they all start walking through the police line, there is no more police line left. The police are now in a mob. So not safe for the officers at all. But Deputy Chief or Chief, did you want to address that?
If I may, the only thing I could add is is just from an operational standpoint, we always leave 2 avenues of escape or 2 avenues for people to leave. So if we make an announcement and say, it's time to leave, this is an unlawful assembly, part of that announcement tells people which direction to go or which directions to go. So there wouldn't be a requirement or a need for people to walk through or break through that police line just to get out of the area. So if that helps give you a little bit of a context of how we're going to position officers as well to allow people to leave and give them an opportunity to comply with any direction.
Other questions, comments?
I guess to Councilmember Watson, would you be comfortable with an amendment that replaced walking and running with some sort of other word that implied breaking through a police line?
I believe that's a nod.
Yes, that's a yes. And there's always 18 also.
Yep.
Right. So I guess again, to our officers who have been in this situation, is there a word that would encompass that behavior that does not describe the speed of the movement? Pushing, braking, attempting to pass, what in terms of actually policing that situation, what would be appropriate?
Mr. East, I defer to Mr. Easterly with the wording when we come up with, but I think we probably can come up with something to delineate that whole concept of that. And Mr. Easterly would probably come up with something with that. But so.
if I could offer a suggestion, maybe we petition Mr. Easterly to be working on that while we might go through some other amendments. Is that something that is acceptable to folks? Are there any other questions, comments about the ordinance?
Just point of order. Do we want to get a motion on the table and then continue our discussion?
That was what I was just about to say. So
I will make that motion if that would help. I move approval of the revised ordinance number 1491, disorderly conduct. Discussion.
Second. So moved by the Mayor Pro Tem, seconded by the Mayor. If you wouldn't mind, I have a couple of amendments, Ms. Mayor Pro Tem.
Please continue. Thanks.
Okay, I would like my first amendment. I will make a motion to amend to strike clause 10D. That is exposing one's or their buttocks, genitalia, or if a female exposing their breasts, replace that. And letter the next points accordingly. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion on that item? Just to speak to my motion, Councilmember Watson, I think your point's well taken. It was something that I certainly agree with. And I actually, Mr. Homier, I appreciate your comments regarding kind of the double charge factor, because that's something that I hadn't necessarily considered, but it is something that obviously just gives me another reason to vote in favor of my own amendment. So I'm very happy about that. Other comments?
I would make a motion to strike loiter from chapter.
We have a motion.
We haven't voted yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. We have to vote to accept that motion. Is that
Yep.
right?
I wanted to make sure if there are any other comments on the motion to amend. All right. Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Wonderful. That amendment passes. Mayor Pro Tem.
I guess there's also the reserved, the excess reserves. Should I delineate those as part of my amendment?
I do have a list, but please feel free. Go ahead.
So I would move, I have a kind of multi-part amendment. So I would move to strike reserved from chapter 1. I would move to strike reserved from chapter 6. Also from, sorry, my highlights aren't showing up for some reason. Also from chapter 19.
And 31D would be the other one.
There was a
31D, I believe, is the
31D. Oh, I haven't gone far enough yet. Sorry, hang on. Yes, and also 31D.
I'll second that motion. And if I could speak to one item on it, I will also eventually be making a motion to just strike item 19 from the document, but I'm still in favor of the motion as presented.
So, okay, wait, then we vote.
We have to
Sorry.
vote.
Yep, just making sure that you had it out. All right. So any discussion on that motion? All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Wonderful. I am going to make a motion to amend by striking point 19 and replacing that with reserved. Is there a second on that?
Second.
I will second, and then I have a point of discussion.
It's seconded by Councilmember Bacon, but then go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm bad at processes. As part of that amendment, should we also add the nighttime to chapter 4, or was that not significant once it was removed from?
I'll to just speak of my motion. I don't think it's significant. I think that the point of it was to combine it and kind of really hone in that language before was, I think, a little bit broad in the way that it was used. So I think that the combining of those made the most sense. I don't think we need to add nighttime, but I'm open to that discussion. Councilmember Babcock.
Thank you. I'm sweeping the cobwebs of my mind, but prowling about a dwelling place after dark to help me, Homer Easterly. Come on, yeah, guys.
Well, look, I would say
it makes it a lesser included charge of a burglary. So if someone's charged with felonies, right? There's a ladder, but you want lesser included. So including nighttime allows you to have a lesser charge carry for, is it burglary that happens after dark? And it's, Mr. Easterly, you had it earlier.
Yeah, breaking and entering, burglary, but I would agree. I don't think it's necessary.
Okay.
I think you're right. First, if they're charged with a felony, this would be, you'd either have to charge with a misdemeanor under state law or misdemeanor under your ordinance, right? And so I suspect the city's never going to prosecute a felony. It will be the county prosecutor. So I'm not sure they're going to be looking to include a lesser offense under the city ordinance. Having said that, peeping or prowling, I don't care what time of the day it is, I don't like it. So I think probably the nighttime isn't going to mean a bit of difference.
Excellent.
I agree.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the motion? All right, all those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Wonderful. Now on to what is actually I handed over to Councilmember Watson because I have it down, but I don't know if we or Mr. Easterly. 10E, do we have any language that would accomplish the goals here?
Pushing or running through a line, please line.
Councilmember Watson, are you comfortable with that?
Oh, pushing or running. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Chief, Deputy Chief.
Yeah, I'm good. We're good with that.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Make a motion.
Please.
Okay. I would like to make a motion to change 10E from walking to pushing.
Okay. I will second that motion. Any more discussion? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Wonderful. That passes as well. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
I would like to make a motion to remove the word loiter from chapter 13.
I will second that motion. Is there any discussion on this item? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, same sign. That passes unanimously as well. Are there any other amendments?
I just wanted to clarify, 13 will now read knowingly attend, frequent, or operate any place where prostitution, we're taking out or loiter in, correct?
Oh, right. Or operate any place. Yes. Or loiter in. Is that, can we kind of retroactively apply that, or do we need to re-vote on that amendment?
I think you should probably re-vote on it. At least I should say the motion would be then to remove in as well.
Yes. Or operate.
Or I believe it would be a motion.
It would be the whole phrase or
right?
loiter in. Or operate any, yes. So the motion, I will amend my motion to remove the entire phrase.
We voted on the motion already. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a motion to amend section 13, strike the word or right after the word operate. So now the full clause will read, knowingly attend, frequent, or operate in any place where prostitution, gambling, the illegal sale of intoxicating liquor, and so on and so on. And I'll look for a second.
I'll second that.
Mr. Homier, is that something you're comfortable with?
Yeah, can you repeat it for me?
So I believe the motion from Mayor Pro Tem previously was to strike the word loiter specifically, and that passed. And so my motion would be to strike the word or after operate, to then make the statement fully, knowingly attend, frequent, or operate in any place where prostitution, gambling, and so on and so on.
Yeah, the only issue I have is whether we want to strike in as well, so that it would be attend, frequent, or operate any place where.
I'd consider that a friendly amendment if
I'll make that friendly
seconder
amendment.
is comfortable.
Yep.
So the motion is now to remove the words or and in the first sentence after the word operate. Mr. Homier, are you comfortable with that?
Yes, I am.
Great. Any discussion?
Thanks for cleaning up after me, Aaron.
Anytime. Thank you, Mr. Homier, for making sure that I'm cleaning up in the right way. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Wonderful. That passes unanimously as well. Are there any other amendments or comments?
That's everything I had.
Okay. Then we're on to the main motion as amended. I will make a comment that I made similar to what my initial council member comments were. I want to thank Chief Johnson, Deputy Chief Gonzalez, Mr. Easterly, Mr. Homier, George, really Elaine, all the staff that helped on this, as well as the HRC members that have been pushing really, really good reform. Chuck and Crystal specifically that were in the room. I know when I was, Councilmember Bacon, the liaison to the HRC, also in the room, making really, really good work happen. I think that, again, this is something that I believe myself and Councilmember Meadows brought up earlier in the year. We walked through it. We wanted a little bit more input from HRC members and from the community. We got a work group together. It took several hours, certainly, but those were hours well spent. And I think that this really cleans up a portion of our code that has needed it for some time. And I'm very happy to see this finally on the council agenda as a full body piece of work that I think everybody can be very proud of. So again, and I said it last meeting, I'll say it again, the fight for equity is something that does not just take one resolution. It does not just take one statement. It is constant work. And I'm proud to say that this is another step in that direction. So thank you to everybody that worked on this. I appreciate your time. I will be voting yes. Any other comments?
Similar, yeah, I just want to say that there's sometimes when you approach this stuff, there's a resistance to asking for outside opinions because it seems to complicate things. It certainly makes it take longer. I think that this is proof that it results in a stronger final product, and that effort is worth the effort that it takes. And I want to appreciate, I want to express appreciation for everybody that kind of patiently worked through the process so that we could come to something that was strong and is going to be a benefit to our community.
Mhm. And I want to mention very specifically Deputy Chief Gonzalez. You were with us during the first iteration of this, going through line by line, and kind of been with us step through step. And I just appreciate your commitment to this and your work with us. So I wanted to thank you specifically for that as well.
Thank you. Thank you. My pleasure.
Councilmember Bacon.
And I just want to state that I'm pretty sure it's probably uncomfortable a lot of times when you're going through this magnitude of change, a lot of time all at once, but anytime there's discomfort, there's probably growth. So I know I just want to thank, for particularly to law enforcement, Chief Johnson and Deputy Chief Gonzalez for just their participation, flexibility, their listening, they've been, for all the knocks that law enforcement takes, they've been ultimately reasonable, fair, transparent, good and bad. It's been really a pleasure to work with them on this project and many more in the future. And just thank you guys for being so supportive. And I know the discomfort, and anything we can do to support you and the officers, we're here to do that as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Any other comments? Go ahead, Ms. Councilmember Watson.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Easterly for coming today. And I'm proud to be where we are today because I remember where we were when the disorderly conduct first presented. And there's been a lot of understanding this time. And I want to also thank you, Chief Johnson, and you, Deputy Chief Gonzalez, for being here and for helping us understand from your perspective, and for also reaching out to understand from our perspectives as well. I appreciate the circular work that it takes to make a great community.
Welcome.
Other comments? Wonderful. Seeing none, I will call for a vote on this motion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, this motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Well, we don't have another item on our agenda. I will make a motion and a request to enter closed session to discuss a written confidential legal opinion with the city attorney pursuant to MCL 15.268H. And look for a second. Seconded by Councilmember Babcock, I believe.
I'll second it, but don't we also have to
Roll call.
give some idea of the subject?
Nope. By its very nature, the disclosure of the subject matter could breach the attorney-client privilege. So it is not necessarily required under the Open Meetings Act. It is different for, say, pending civil litigation where you actually have to name the case caption. But in this case, the nature of the confidential written legal opinion is confidential as well.
Great. And I will call for a roll call vote.
Mayor, can I jump in?
Sorry, go ahead. Yep.
Just to say that there's an email for council from Emily at 7:37 with your new login. And then we do have to come back to this meeting. Is that correct, Mayor?
Yes, I was going to say that right, hopefully after the motion, but yes. So we will be leaving this meeting. You'll see a screen that says we will be right back. We will be coming back to this meeting to end the council meeting. We won't be taking any further action though after we do that. So, so I'll call for a roll call vote. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Bacon,
Yes.
Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg,
Yes.
Mayor Stevens.
Yes. All right. We will be back shortly. Council members, there should be a link in your email on the closed session. Thanks, everybody.
This one.
Emily, if you wouldn't mind taking the screen off. Thanks. Or sorry, Nicole, my bad. All right, I will make a motion to come back into open session. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Watson. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Bacon,
Yes.
Councilmember Watson,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Greg,
Yes.
Mayor Stevens.
Yes. All right, now that we are back in open session, I will conclude our meeting because that was our agenda. Thank you for everybody that attended. Thank you, Mr. Easterly, Mr. Homier, Mr. Lahanas, and everybody. Stick with us. Thanks, guys. See you
Thank
next
you.
time.
Thank you all.
Stay safe, everybody.
Good night.
Always a pleasure.